The journey of caregiving is complex, but what happens when you're navigating the path while also facing a personal diagnosis? Today, we'll hear a powerful story from Sharon Lukert, the author of Till My Memory Fails Me. Sharon offers a unique and critical perspective. She is not only the caregiver for her mother with advanced Alzheimer's, but she is also living with early stage mild cognitive impairment. We dive into her experience of making difficult adjustments, the importance of emotional and spiritual resilience, and the invaluable lessons she's learned about compassionate care. Join us for inspiring discussion on what it truly means to find strength on both sides of the caregiving relationship. Welcome to Fading Memories, your source for all things dementia caregiving. I'm your host, Jen Fink, and I have had 3 generations of loved ones with dementia, and I'm here to share the knowledge I've gained with you. Welcome back, Fading Memories listeners. You know, I always appreciate your time, and I think today is going to be well worth hearing. With me today is Sharon Lukert. She is the author of Till My Memory Fails Me. She's here today to discuss a couple of really relevant topics. One, how she is living with early stage MCI, memory of mild cognitive impairment. And she is also the caregiver for her mom, who is in advanced Alzheimer's. So, lots to talk about. Thanks for joining me, Sharon.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. So, why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about your background, and then we'll dive in.
Sure. So, my background includes I was a nurse for quite a while and earlier in my life, and I also was a chaplain, and including a chaplain for hospice. So I've worked with a lot of people with cognitive issues for most of my life, one way or another. And let's see, I was working as a chaplain and also an educator for chaplains, back in 2019. And that's when I first started noticing some changes. They were odd little things. It wasn't really memory as much as not recognizing someone I knew. And then I was in a place that I should have recognized. It was the downtown of where I live, and I wasn't quite sure where I was. So given that, I went through neuropsychological testing, and things looked pretty good, except for one area that was a little low. And he said, it could be stress. He kind of encouraged me to retire on the early side, which I did. But he also said if it doesn't get better, to come back. And so 2 years later, I went back after I had a series of missed appointments and some word finding issues and things like that. And sure enough, there were a few more areas that were down. And he said, yeah, this is definitely mild cognitive impairment. But of course, at that point, we didn't know why.
So, did you pay more attention to those signs because your mom has Alzheimer's and you're kind of familiar with that path, plus your career working with people with cognitive issues?
It was mainly because of my career and working with people. My mom actually didn't have symptoms until, what year was it? 2023. So it was after I was diagnosed, and actually when there was a death in the family, and her grieving process, she's 95. And her grieving process just kind of led into cognitive decline as well. And over a 6-month period, we just really saw her go down in what she was able to do. She was in an assisted living at that point. And it was just a year ago in June that I made the decision that she needed to move to memory care because she really couldn't get the care that she needed anymore where she'd been living.
That's a pretty quick decline.
It was a fast decline. I think she was really smart, and I think she was able to hide it a lot in the beginning because she always seemed to have a very good memory and seemed to be on top of things. I didn't worry about her memory too much until it became more obvious.
It's my understanding that people that have like more education, higher intelligence, have more cognitive reserves to, as you said, kind of hide it, cope with the challenges of
Mhm.
what's going on. And then when they run out of those reserves, it's just, phew, it's like really rapid decline. So she sounds like what I've learned, which
Mhm.
is kind of interesting because I've never actually met anybody who falls under that category. So you were diagnosed and then she was. That must have been a really exciting time in your life.
It was a difficult few years, that's for sure.
Between
Lots of adjustment.
between COVID and your diagnosis and her diagnosis, yeah, the last 5 years have been hard for a lot of people. But
Mhm.
you mentioned, adjustments. What kind of adjustments have you made so that you can remain as independent as possible? And obviously, you're doing a good job because you wrote a book, which I know personally is not the easiest thing to do.
Right. Yeah, well, it's interesting because one of the areas I have difficulty is in space, knowing where things are spatially. And so one of the early things I had to give up, which people usually resist giving up as long as they can, is driving. I had a couple of close calls, and I'm very open about talking about what's going on with me. And I think that's really helped a lot because my friends understand what's going on. My husband's a great support, and that really makes a difference. And so my friends, when I realized I needed to give up driving, they kind of pulled together this little rotation of people who will serve as my driver once a week, to help me get around. And so I'm not relying just on my husband so much anymore, you know, so that he can still be as independent as he wants to be. And
That's a good option. I think it would help if people talked about what can we do if I get to a point where I cannot drive, even if it's temporary from, maybe recovering from a surgery or God forbid a broken bone. All of a sudden you find you can't drive and, it only takes a few days before you're climbing the walls.
right, right.
But having your friends drive you around also gives you some social opportunities. That's all we know is good for our brains. So kudos
Yeah.
to them.
Yeah, yeah, it's been great. Some of them were just acquaintances at the beginning, but we've become good friends through the process. So it's been really beneficial, both socially as well as helping me get around when I need to or want to.
Well, it's
So
good for them too. So I'm it makes me really feel great that you got that they did that for you, and it's just benefiting everybody because it's kind of the thing that I preach is that, we need to come together and support everybody, regardless of memory issues or not. Just that's the way our country should work, but that's a whole other show. So driving is always one of the biggest challenges. I actually have really wacko vision, so I have lazy eyes, so my brain thinks I see double, so it only processes the vision one eye at a time. It's been that way my whole life, normal for me,
Mhm.
but I'm also aware that I have because I don't have any depth perception. So I'm aware it's like I'll be 59 at the end of this year, 2025. That the car that I bought 9 years ago might be the last one because I've keep my cars for like 15 years.
Awesome.
And so it's important to know your limitations and not like I'm not gonna cling on to driving and they just put in a traffic circle on Highway 49 where you go from 65 miles an hour to the traffic circle at 30,
Mm,
speed back up, and then there's another traffic circle they're building that's gonna drop the speed to 35. And that sounds terrifying.
yeah.
And excuse me. So it's like, okay, I'm not gonna risk my life for anybody else's just to get someplace. So I
Yeah.
can figure out alternatives.
Right,
So what
right.
excuse me. What other um changes have you made that have helped you keep the memory as strong as possible, but also keep as much independence as possible? Because that's what we all want.
Sure, sure. Yeah, well, I have to say, writing the book really kept my mind going. So I often say I wrote the book for myself as much as I wrote it for others, because just the writing process, and sitting down and working on it every day, really kept my mind pretty clear. I think a lot longer than it would have otherwise. So staying active, I think, is really important. I've started an exercise program at home since it is hard for me to get out routinely to get somewhere. So that's been it's a cardio dance. I love dance. So I get motivated to go. If it were just doing exercise, I don't enjoy it so much. So this is really helpful.
Well, and I understand learning new dance steps or dance choreography is
Mhm.
also because you're learning new things and it's a challenge. So that's definitely good for your brain.
Yeah, and I have found it's definitely more of a challenge than I was a dancer when I was young, and I'm surprised at how much more of a challenge it is now. But you're right, it really does make me think at the same time that I'm moving and enjoying myself. So it helps in a couple different ways. Um,
Definitely. So we didn't mention the name of the book. I don't think we did. The name of the book is Till My Memory Fails Me. Do you have one of those handy you can show for the YouTube watchers? There we go.
there,
That's I
there.
like the colors. Um,
Yeah.
what prompted you to write the book?
You know, I wrote the book because when I was first diagnosed, I've always considered myself a lifelong learner, and I didn't really know much about mild cognitive impairment. And so I really wanted to learn more. And I could find facts and figures, but I couldn't find a personal, excuse me, I couldn't find a personal experience of it. There were lots of books about dementia and lots of books about caregiving, but I couldn't find anything on the early stages. And so I had already started journaling what I was going through and also what I was learning, just looking online and that kind of thing. And I began to be involved in research studies pretty early on. And so I was learning more about what they were looking at and what they were hoping was going to happen in the future, that kind of thing. Um, so I started sharing my journal notes with some friends, and they said, "Boy, you should really share this with other people. This could be really helpful." And from the reception it's gotten so far, it seems like a lot of people have really been looking for something like this. So I'm glad I followed through and got it out there.
I am too, because now when you mentioned it, I have lots and lots of books on caregiving and books on dementia and memoirs for people from people like yourself, but not MCI. Do you have a really good past episode where a good online friend of mine, her husband's had MCI for 15, 20 years.
Mhm.
Their son was in middle school and he is, let's see, he went to college. He's a JAG officer and he's deployed right now, which is not doesn't make mama's heart too happy, but she's proud of him. So however many years that is, he went to law school. Yeah, it's probably been close to 20 years. And he's in the what is it, the group of people that his has not progressed. I guess with
Mhm.
traditional MCI, you have like 30% of the people who get better, which I find a little confusing. About 30% stay in mild impairment, and then the other 30% progress. So, but
Yeah.
they feel like you are in the more the group that's going to progress because of the deficits they saw on a PET scan.
Um, a couple of things. First, going back to what you were mentioning about the different MCIs, yeah, some people just stay stable, and a lot of them are because it may have been from a stroke or something like that, which is a one-time event, so it doesn't really progress. Some people get better because it's sometimes from medication or stress can even cause MCI. Grief can cause MCI. Um, but yeah, there is the percentage like myself where it progresses. What they saw in the PET scan was one of the proteins that builds up when there's Alzheimer's is amyloid,
Mm-hmm.
and they saw that my amyloid was elevated. So between having an elevated amount of amyloid and I've been tested every 2 years since I was first diagnosed. So they're seeing a very gradual but consistent decline. So that's how they determine between the two. If it was just one without the other, then maybe, maybe not. But between the two, they're pretty sure it's due to Alzheimer's and that it's just a very slow progression I'm in.
Well, slow is good.
Yeah, slow is good.
Have they suggested that you might be a good candidate for the drugs, the drug treatment?
I've considered it. It was offered for me. The right now the medication, the IV medications that are offered, I think it's called lenanicap. I can't
It's lecanemab and
Yes.
donanemab. And I like to joke that I am an artist because I'm also a retired photographer. For those people who don't know that, most of the listeners likely do. I should not know all these scientific words. So anything that ends in MAUB is a monoclonal antibody treatment. So there you go. There's your science lesson for this episode.
Right.
But yeah, there was another one, aducanumab, but I don't think they use that one anymore.
Yeah, I don't think so. Anyhow, they're both an IV infusion. For me, I'd have to go 2 hours away from home to get it once a month. It's either once a month or every 2 weeks. I don't remember. But there were also some pretty high risks involved, mainly brain bleed.
Definitely not good.
Right. So at this point, I've decided I wasn't interested. I don't know whether that will change if things progress faster or more, but at this point, I'm content with making the adjustments I need to make. And I have a wonderful support group of other people with MCI and early Alzheimer's. And, we talk a lot about how we can do workarounds, and continue to be as active as we can.
This is important. And driving 2 hours each direction, I think one drug is once a month and one is twice a month. Lecanemab's the one that's twice a month, I believe. Not that it matters too much. That's a lot.
Yeah, that's a lot.
I do that once a month. I go get my hair cut. I go to the chiropractor to visit my daughter. And sometimes about halfway there, I'm like, why the hell am I doing or especially the last 2 months, the chiropractor's been out of town or not in the office. So I think I drove down once and just got my haircut and came home, which is like the dumbest use of my time. But then the second time I saw my daughter, we spent, actually maybe we saw them both times. Doesn't matter. But yeah, it's a lot. You wouldn't think it would be, but it takes a toll on you.
It does. Yeah, it does.
And I don't know what the infusion would be like, but that just seems like not the best combination. So I think they're working on being able to do it at home. Like once you've established the routine, they've tested you, you're not at risk of the brain bleed or you're not showing signs of it, then I think they're working towards not having to go to an infusion clinic.
Right.
Hard to keep up with all that news.
Yeah. Yeah, I figure, they're doing so much good research right now. I figure something in the next few years will pop up and I'll go, yeah, that sounds like the thing I want to try.
That makes good sense. So you said you're in a really good support group. Are there others that have some workarounds, as you called them, that you think are worthy of sharing with the listeners? The reason I'm sharing this is because I feel like caregivers like myself, which you are as well, it helps if we understand what our person is going through and how we can help them remain independent. Because I know it's very difficult not to, and you can tell me if you felt this way as well, to try to just take over and handle everything and kind of keep them wrapped in bubble wrap. And I don't know why we react that way, but it seems pretty typical.
Yeah, my husband gets a little overprotective sometimes. Recently I was traveling and when I came back and, it was time to get the suitcases out of the shuttle and I'm used to doing that kind of thing myself. And he started going for it. I said, what are you doing? So I have to remind him sometimes that, it's good for me to keep as active as possible. But some of the workarounds, one area where I'm having a little bit of difficulty now, and I've heard this from others, is in the kitchen. I love to cook, and I still do the majority of the cooking, but I need some help now where I didn't before. Mainly if something's really heavy and hot. I've learned I'm not really good at moving that from one place to another. Getting things in and out of the oven. I burned myself a few times, and I also spilled the pumpkin pie before it was baked
Oh, messy.
all over the inside of the oven.
Oh, no.
It was a mess.
Yeah, that's
So,
almost like, oh, just close the door.
right. So I've learned that I need assistance, and my husband's been really good about jumping in and helping me. He's also good about asking me when I need help rather than just jumping in and doing it for me. Because I know some people in the support group, their partner has taken over cooking.
Mm.
And it's a loss for them because they're used to doing the cooking. Even if they just did part of it and their partner did part of it, it would keep them involved in it a little bit more. So I think that's an area where we can try to really pay attention of how much is somebody still able to do something, and allowing them to do as much as they can.
So your challenges in the kitchen sound more physical, though. Do you think that's tied to the MCI?
Yeah, it's the spatial thing again.
Ah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
see, I've had some of those issues. Like, I am a really good cook, but my husband jokes, sometimes the messier the kitchen, the tastier the food. And I try really hard, but I'm always pushing things out of the pan. It's frustrating to sin. And I learned the hard way years and years ago. Do not do stir fry when you're time crunched and under pressure because I had food fleeing everywhere. So that makes sense that it is physical, but it's also tied to the visual processing.
Right, right.
I'm going to use that excuse next time I make a mess of the kitchen because it's a challenge to cook and not make a mess. Like he cleans the kitchen on Saturdays, and then if I'm cooking on Monday, he'll be like, "Oh, my poor clean kitchen." It's like you don't have to eat. Kind of a running gag.
Yeah.
In your support group, is anybody having challenges? Because you walk into any, it doesn't even have to be a modern kitchen, but any typical kitchen, and it's like, where is anything? I mean, everything is behind closed doors unless you have some open shelving, but I don't think most people have too much of that. Have they expressed that that's a challenge, maybe?
It is a challenge, and I know some people have like put signs up, and that can be helpful. Um, for me, sometimes the challenge is I have to go back and read the recipe over and over again. It's like I can't get it even in one or two times. It's like, and I don't want to have it right there because it gets wet. So, finding ways to, okay, I have to, what I've learned is I prepare everything first before I start the recipe because that makes it a little bit easier than going back and forth. The other thing that's been really important, it's in the kitchen, but it's also outside of the kitchen, is my husband has learned not to talk to me when I'm trying to do something because I can't process what he's saying at the same time that I'm concentrating on something. And this is even, we were walking around the house the other day and he was showing me something and he was talking and talking. And I finally said, whoa, 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 slow down. I only got like a snippet of what he was trying to tell me. So
I could see that. I have to make sure to read recipes all the way through before I put on the afternoon podcast that I like to listen to. Because one day I was cooking and got all confused. Not all, I got the steps all out of order and stuff. I'm like, it came out fine, but it probably would have been better had I done it in the right order. But it was because I hadn't read the whole recipe through.
Right.
I was rushing. But,
Yeah.
excuse me. I know you and I both got like tickles today.
A little bit. Yeah. Well, we have a lot of smoke in the air here. So,
yeah, those Canadian wildfires.
Canadian
I don't know what my problem is. No wildfires around here, knock wood.
Yeah, really.
I mean, that's just kind of like a typical California summer. It's, wildfire somewhere.
Yeah.
I guess we started our year off with those. Is there other workarounds that you think would be beneficial for people like us, caregivers, to know?
I think, and this, I'm speaking from a caregiver perspective here with my mom. I have really learned to just enter her world and not correct her, um, and really be curious. I mean, recently, some of her behaviors have changed. And so it's trying to figure out what has brought on the changes. And it turns out that she actually has a little bit of an infection in her leg, you know. So just really taking the time to listen. And I mean, she's very repetitive, as many people are, and I hear often the same thing over and over again. But I try to listen for what's underneath the words. How is she doing emotionally? And that also gives me a sense of how she's doing physically. Because if she seems kind of down and her energy's really low, it's kind of like, hmm. And I'll ask her, how are you feeling? Oh, I think I'm okay. And I'll say, well, does anything hurt? And she just kind of goes blank. So it really is kind of a guessing game of trying to figure out what's going on. But not correcting her.
No.
That doesn't work at all. And what I have found that works for my mom, I'm sure everybody has something different. It may not be this, is singing, because she was always a singer. So if she's feeling down or doesn't want to do something, we start singing, "Oh dear, what can the matter be?" And she perks right up. It's so, I think, really knowing the person and knowing you know, what motivates them, even if it's a tiny thing like a song or coloring or a certain picture they love. But whatever, something to cuddle. She has a teddy bear that she loves too. So sometimes if I give her the teddy bear, it just makes her excited to have something cuddly to hold on to.
We all like cuddly stuff.
Yeah.
I've learned that knowing their history and keeping their history in the back of your mind helps a lot too. And I learned this more after mom was gone than before, which was frustrating. She would always walk behind me. And she did not need any walking aids, but she would walk watching her feet, making her a fall risk. And I knew she was going to fall on the sidewalk and I was going to be the monster because I didn't let her catch up. And you know, people were going to make assumptions. And I just didn't want any of that for her, for me. And thankfully, she never fell on my watch. After she passed away, a dementia caregiver trainer that's been a guest, we were talking offline, and she said, "Didn't you say your mom was the oldest of four?" And I'm like, "Yeah, why?" And she's like, "That's why she was walked behind you. She was watching the kids." And I'm like, "Well, this is not the time to be telling me this. This is not helpful now." But I didn't think about her past and, where, when you talk about being in their reality, being in their world, it made perfectly good sense when somebody pointed it out. But like I said, she pointed it out a little too late.
Yeah, yeah. I know for my mom, she was a nurse. And so how that comes up now is she's always worried about the residents. How are they doing? Are they okay? Are they getting what they need? That kind of thing. One of the things I'm doing now to prepare for the future, knowing that I will probably progress, is writing things down like that now. What are the things that give me comfort? What are the things that that I will likely still respond to even when I have dementia, so that caregivers will know, they'll have an idea, in the future, what might be helpful for me.
No, that sounds excellent. We should all do that, right? Regardless, because you never know.
You never know,
Um,
right?
I would hope that my husband and my daughter would understand that I need some sort of creative outlet fairly regularly, not necessarily daily, just to, I don't know, calm my soul, to say at the least. And it doesn't have to be a big deal. It doesn't have to be like, I like to make handmade greeting cards. So I don't have to be, you know, ears deep in craft supplies. There was one day it seemed like the whole world was out to annoy me. And I had about 20, 25 minutes before I needed to like start dinner or some other task. And I had a project in mind. I'm like, let me pull out the tools and see if what's in my brain will, if I have the stuff that will pull off this idea. And just that little bit of whatever, checking out the tools, kind of thinking through the project, all of a sudden the whole world seemed a lot less annoying.
Yeah, yeah,
I would
yeah.
think coloring or any just any basic art would be something that would be calming. So maybe I should write it down. Like, keep in mind, folks.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh,
One of the
go ahead.
I was gonna say, well, one of the things I learned, I listened to an international Alzheimer's conference, a particular lecture from this professor from China, and she did research study that lasted 10 years, not on cure or treatment, but on quality of life. And I found that fascinating. And what she found was for the people who develop positive habits like coloring, or puzzles or music or meditation, any of those, if they started it early on, she followed them all the way through dementia, that those habits they could maintain those habits even into advanced dementia. And they'd still have a sense of quality of life. It may not be the same as it was 10 years earlier, but it was better than total apathy, and not having anything, that gave them a sense of purpose and enjoyment, So that really motivated me, and that I found that out early on when I was writing this book. So there's a lot about that in the book as well.
Oh, that's really fascinating. That's also
Yeah.
really good to know.
Yeah.
So I have like it's sort of controversial question since you're kind of the unique person to ask this, but there's debate on therapeutic fibbing or fiblets. My mom thought I was her best friend, and
Mhm.
she always fussed. Did her husband know where she was at? It was always a snarky tone of voice, super frustrating. Did
Mhm.
he had I seen her husband? Did he know where we were going? And there was no way in heck I was going to remind her he was dead. Like every time she asked me that, no way. So I just answered in a logical way that had he been still living would have made sense. And
Mhm.
I do know that there are some dementia trainers that are just against therapeutic fibbing. I
Mhm.
need to ask them specifically why. And I think you need to use it in like moderation, like everything. There was one time she asked me about her parents. Had I seen her parents recently? So I
Mhm.
could honestly say no, because
Mhm.
they've been gone a while.
Yeah.
And what did I said? No, I hadn't seen them for a while, but I think they were doing pretty well. That's
Mhm.
not really a lie.
Mhm.
Hope my grandparents are doing okay, the afterlife, however that might play out. I don't know.
Right.
They were good, hardworking, people. So, you know, one has to assume they're doing fine.
Mhm.
Do you have any opinions on this?
I do. I do. And I'm a strong believer in compassionate fibbing. Um, one dementia ancestor, I call the people I used to work with, she would forget that her husband had died. And her son would always say, "Oh, mom, he died like 10 years ago." And she would go through terrible grief again, over and over again. And I was her caregiver. And at some point I was able to have a conversation with him that, she really doesn't understand. And it's bringing her more grief. It's not supporting her. And he he decided to give it a try. And so when she'd ask, "Where's my husband?" "Oh, he he's just not here right now." And she'd be satisfied with that. And then she didn't have to feel so sad all the time. Um, and I do the same thing with my mom. She sometimes she thinks I'm her sister, and we're back in childhood, and she'll ask me about, "Wasn't that funny when Dad used to go out and da da da?" I'll go, "Yeah, that sounds so funny. I don't quite remember that, but yeah, sure."
I guess the way he responded, Dad's not here right now, isn't really a lie. It's just
Exactly.
not getting all detailed on the truth. So maybe people that are against, or I mean, against might be too strong a term. It might all be just very nuanced, but that might be where they're coming from because that's different than my mom would specifically ask, had I seen him?
Mhm.
Sometimes I'd say no.
Uh-huh.
Other times I'd be like, oh, I think he's having lunch with his friend. I would
Mhm.
name the friend, or
Mhm.
so maybe that's not necessarily lying. I never was really super comfortable just flat out telling her whatever,
Mhm.
because you don't want to lie to your mom.
Sure.
That's not a
Sure.
good idea.
Yeah.
But my aunt went through this same thing with my grandmother who had vascular dementia. She got
Mhm.
very upset one day, was convinced that my grandfather, who was the sweetest man on the planet, had left her for another woman. Well, I'm not exactly
Mhm.
sure how you handle that one, but
Mhm. Mhm.
my aunt, thinking logically, she says,
Mhm.
no, no, he didn't leave you for another woman. He died. I did not get the response my aunt was hoping for.
No, I'm sure.
So
Yeah.
that's one of those rare times when you actually learn from somebody else's mistake.
Mhm. Yeah.
So what was the book writing process like? You said you worked on it every day. I only do mine like once or twice a week.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. I felt really compelled, partially because I didn't know how quickly things were changing for me. So that gave me a sense of urgency with the writing. However, I was partway through writing the book when I have a sister who ended up with a glioblastoma. And
Mm.
long story short, she ended up dying in about 5 months.
Oof.
And I was caring for her and also helping her husband. And this was around the time that my mother developed dementia at the same time. So
My goodness.
I just had to put it aside for a good 6 months and um, then picked it up again. But I had I I had all of these stories, and it sounds similar to what you have, from people that I worked with and lessons that I've learned from them. So I knew what I wanted to write. So then it was a matter of putting it in order and, including my own experience. And I actually interviewed two people from my support group who were willing to share their story around diagnosis, and what that experience is like. So there would be more than just my story. And of course, all the people I worked with before, I didn't know what their testing was like or if they even had any, 10, 12 years ago. We didn't have the kind of testing we have now.
No. It took my mom forever to get diagnosed. She was very good at avoiding like the trip to the memory clinic.
Hmm.
Um, I've told this story a lot, but yeah, she went from denying there was a problem to moving into is it agnosinosia where you don't know what you don't know
Hmm.
to the point where I mean she was like mid stage by the time she actually got a formal diagnosis, and by that point everybody's like, sure, tell us something we don't know.
Right, right, right.
Not very helpful, but I think now they've got the blood test, and I don't know how they diagnosed her. I didn't get to ask that
Yeah,
because
yeah.
somehow they lost all her MRIs and all that good stuff. So,
Mm-hmm.
is there like a last minute piece of advice you want to leave the listeners other than sounds like they should definitely read this book?
Yeah, I would say the book really I say the heart of the book is really about emotional and spiritual resilience, because it's not something that we look at a whole lot, and how can we develop that resilience? Like you said, the cognitive reserve. Well, there's also emotional and spiritual reserve, that can help with our quality of life as we're going through cognitive decline. That's what my own focus is in my life, and that's what I've written about, because we're more than just the physical and cognitive changes. There's a lot more to each one of us than that. And the emotions, as you probably know, they carry on well after the cognitive abilities have been gone. They still feel emotionally what's happening. So anyhow, yeah, I guess that's a piece of advice it is really consider for yourself, for the people that you're caring for. How can you help support them spiritually and emotionally, whatever that might look like.
Can you answer what that looks like for you pretty quickly? Because
Sure.
I'm thinking like, what does that mean for me? That's going to be like in the back of my brain the rest of the day.
Uh-huh. For me, emotionally, it means really staying connected with my meditation. I do a lot of what I call on-the-spot meditations. You don't have to be sitting down formally. So looking out a window and enjoying the bees that are on the flowers right now, or the hummingbirds that come by, and just really connecting with that sense of joy and awe. That's that's the emotional piece. Spiritually, there's some Buddhist prayers and stuff that are very meaningful to me. So I've actually recorded them in my own voice. So at a time in the future when I'm maybe in the same care facility my mom's in right now, they can play them for me, even if I can't remember them or say them myself. So those are some things I'm doing now, for myself now as well as in the future.
No, that's excellent. I have hummingbirds too. They're super aggressive and they get really nasty when their feeder's empty. They will literally come up in your face like, yo,
Wow.
fill the. They're really aggressive. It's crazy, but it's
Oh.
it makes me laugh because it's like literally what is it, a couple of ounces, and I'm significantly heavier than a couple of ounces, and I have a elderly golden retriever who has trained me quite well. She has I posted a video to my YouTube channel somewhat recently where I'm demonstrating that she is dragging behind me. The leash is stretched out. It's a 4-foot leash, and my arms. And I said, most people will say she's old, she's tired. That's why she's doing that. And I demonstrated. I took her off the leash. She'll not walk on the leash. So body language is really important, and she was a good demo of that
Yeah.
day. But yeah, she's a riot. She was.
Oh.
My husband and I were eating on the deck, and we went in the kitchen, and she's sitting on the floor staring at the counter where the leftover pizza was. And I just laughed. I was just like, this dog is just too much. And those are the kind of things that help fill up my day because, other than that, it's kind of the same stuff over and over. It's kind of boring. I try to appreciate the beauty because I live in the Sierra foothills. We have lots of pine trees, wildlife all over. Deer walk through my yard, turkeys. There's dogs everywhere. So yeah, it's important to do those. Like couple of doctors from UCSF talked about doing an awe walk.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
So yeah, but I'll have to look into some Buddhist prayers. That could be interesting. But so I would like to encourage the listeners to definitely check out Sharon's book. It is Till My Memory Fails Me, and it might help us as caregivers support our loved ones a little bit better, understanding what people like Sharon are going through.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.